Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and I suppose it was only a matter of time, but in this video I'd like to discuss the massive fallout between Nigel Farage and members of his own party, several of whom have quit to back the Conservatives in this election. But first, if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the idea of a fallout in any political party is not that remarkable. It happens quite a lot, as you might expect when you mix people with egos and high stakes in politics. But anti-EU parties have always had more than their fair share due to differences over the nitty-gritty. For the longest time, those that were seeking to take us out of the EU were completely fractured and disorganised because, although they all agreed that they wanted the UK out of the EU, none of them could agree on what should happen then because they all wanted it for different reasons. They only gained any traction at all when they decided to abandon any thoughts of plans for a post-Brexit Britain, which is why you will not see any written down by any Brexiteer, and worked together on getting us out and worry about the details later. Indeed, really, if you think about it, none of the people that were pushing for our exit from the EU would ever need to think about the details. Ever. Nigel Farage is a classic case. He can talk until the cows come home, and he frequently does, about how a post-Brexit Britain would be. More jobs, more money, better hospitals, etc. And he never has to worry about how to make any of it a reality. He never has to write down any plan for it because not a single comma in any future UK law or treaty will have any involvement from him. The same applies to the rest of his motley crew and even Conservative MPs. As long as they're not silly enough to accept a government position, they get to say how it should be done and then blame the people for not doing it right when it all goes wrong. Steve Baker neatly declined such an offer, although Jacob Rees-Mogg surprisingly accepted. Still, hopefully both will lose their seats next week. But the discord in the Brexit Party started when the EU were pretending that they wouldn't give us an extension back in October. Now, Nigel Farage, if you remember, completely flipped his lid. It was really quite extraordinary. He was effectively demanding an extension. He said how outrageous it was that the EU were talking about not giving us one. The reaction came as something of a shock, as you might imagine, to his supporters and his MEPs. So Farage calling for an extension lost him a lot of credibility within the pro-Brexit community. Then there was his decision not to field candidates in 317 seats that had been earmarked for the Conservatives. Despite Boris Johnson not agreeing to an alliance with Farage, Farage had been saying, I will do a deal with you, Johnson. You know, you withdraw your candidates from these and I'll withdraw them from these, and Boris Johnson was having none of it. So in the end, Farage went, well, if you're not going to agree to the alliance, I will just give you what I was going to give to the alliance and not accept anything in return. Now, I don't personally believe it was actually Farage's decision. I think he did want to field candidates because I don't actually think he wants the UK to leave the EU. But it still went down badly. He's the leader. Nominally, he's the person that makes this decision, and a lot of people have blamed him for it. Nigel Farage was basically saying that Boris Johnson's Brexit was acceptable, even though he doesn't. He keeps saying it's not acceptable, but by withdrawing those candidates, he's saying, actually, it's fine. So in that case, what value does the Brexit Party have now? And although they're still fielding candidates in key seats that the Tories had targeted, which Boris Johnson would rather he did not, I'm not seeing much of a campaign from them. You know, in May, my letterbox was rammed with Brexit Party leaflets. Now, not a single one. I'm getting plenty of Conservative ones. They're really pushing for where I live. None at all for the Brexit Party. I'm not really seeing anything out and about either. So they're not really likely to make much of a splash in the election. Certainly not to the same extent they did in May. And I suppose the final straw for some of his more deranged members was when Nigel Farage removed the whip from one of his MEPs earlier this week, John Longworth. Now, he was apparently undermining election strategy. Now, I'm not quite sure how he was supposed to have done that, given that the Brexit Party don't seem to have an election strategy. The bone of contention was that the Brexit Party are fielding candidates against Labour MPs. Now, given that that will make it more difficult for a Conservative MP to unseat them, Longworth was basically saying, that Farage should have withdrawn them. So it seems that his preferred election strategy was complete capitulation by the Brexit Party and not fielding candidates. Anyway, well, he didn't actually say not anywhere. He said 20 or 30 seats they should target. But these would obviously be ones where the Conservatives weren't in with a shout of it, in which case, really don't see how the Brexit Party would be. But with the Brexit Party effectively adopting the role of new UKIP by targeting EU elections, but shying away from general elections, though this time by choice, 3 other MEPs also quit the party, including Jacob Rees-Mogg's sister. And with no serious attempts to win representation in Parliament, if we do leave the EU, then the Brexit Party will basically disappear up its own arse, won't it? Perfectly reasonable, you might imagine. After all, isn't the purpose of the Brexit Party to deliver Brexit? So what purpose would it serve outside of its own arse if the UK is outside the EU? Well, none. But Nigel Farage was wanting the party to remain relevant post-Brexit, just without any policies and without contesting any seats in the only place where they would still have seats once we've left the EU. So that's a bit odd. I think the only serious threat as things stand is the chairman Richard Tice contesting Hartlepool. But if they get like 1 seat or even a couple of seats, what's that going to do? UKIP had 1 seat at one time, caused by a defection. And they then won it at the next general election, actually, to be fair. I mean, did that mean that UKIP made a splash in Westminster? No, we didn't even notice they were there. And naturally, with 4 former members of the Brexit Party urging people to vote Conservative, it has been pointed out by many that the real aim of Farage's party was always to shift the Conservative Party massively to the right wing of politics. That's where the Tories went to head off the Brexit Party from poaching their voters, because that's where Farage and every one of his cabal are, the far right of politics. So why on earth some people still believe that the Brexit Party represent working class people is utterly beyond me. It's on the far right of politics. Everyone who was standing is right wing. Everyone who won a seat as an MEP in the Brexit Party is extremely wealthy and right wing. But there it is. If Johnson does get his majority, then the Brexit Party will cease to have any relevance at all. And they won't even have a stage in the EU Parliament because they'll be kicked out. Quite hard, I hope. And if Johnson is prevented from getting enough numbers to drive through his Brexit, OK, the Brexit Party stay in the European Parliament. Sorry about that, Europe. But it seems to me probable that under that scenario, Nigel Farage will be blamed for his lacklustre and weak and timid, quite frankly, approach to the election, and his party will still be deflated. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.